even from school age, we probably need to educate our children about the capabilities of generative AI.
We've seen authors, writers, actors complaining about how their original work has been used to train these Gen AI models without their explicit permission.
But that would be my vision for how the future should be. AI for everybody, and it would be publicly owned.
Hello, and welcome to this conversation. Today, we have a distinguished guest with us, Professor Philip Torr from University of Oxford. And we are going to discuss the topic, opportunities and risks in generative AI. As we all know, these days, there is hardly any conversation where AI, and specifically generative AI, does not get a mention. Today, we will hear the views from our distinguished guest. But before we begin, let me introduce Professor Philip. Professor Philip Torr got his PhD at the Robotics Research Group of the University of Oxford under Professor David Murray of the Active Vision Group. He worked for another 3 years at Oxford as a research fellow and still maintains a connect with Oxford as a visiting fellow. He left Oxford to work for 6 years as a research scientist at Microsoft Research, first in Redmond, US, in the Vision Technology Group, and then in Cambridge, founding the vision side of the Machine Learning and Perception Group. He later joined Oxford Brookes University as a professor in the computer vision and machine learning, where he has brought in over £1 million in grants. In 2013, Professor Philip returned to Oxford as a professor, where he has established the Torr Vision Group. Professor Philip has won several awards, including the Marr Prize, the highest honor in computer vision, in 1998. He's a Royal Society Wolfson Research Merit Award holder. Together with his members of his group, he has won several awards and honorary mentions at prestigious conferences such as NIPS 2007, IEEE Conference on Computer Vision and Pattern Recognition 2008, BMVC and ECCV 2010, and continuing on to more recently NIPS 2021. Professor Philip was involved in the algorithm design of Bojo, released by 2D3. Bojo has won a clutch of industry awards, including Computer Graphics World Innovation Award, IABM Peter Wayne Award, and CATS Award for Innovation, and a technical Emmy as well. He then worked closely with Oxford-based company, as well as other companies, such as Sony, on the Wonderbook project. He's the director of new Oxford-based spin-out, Oxite, and is the chief scientific advisor for 5AI. Professor Philip was elected Fellow of Royal Academy of Engineering in 2019 and Fellow of Royal Society in 2021 for contributions to computer vision. In 2021, he was named Turing AI World Leading Research Fellow. Professor Philip, welcome, and it's a pleasure to interview you on this interesting subject.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to ask your views on AI and generative AI. As we all know, AI and generative AI are the buzzword today and has everyone talking about it. What are your 3 top-of-the-mind views on generative AI and the course it will take over time?
Well, I think we're living in a super exciting age for AI, and generative AI, I think, is going to disrupt more than 3 things. In fact, I feel like it's going to enter every aspect of our lives. We've seen amazing progress with the generation of images. We've seen amazing progress with the generation of text and interactive text. And actually, I can see this trajectory continuing. So, we'll move to generating video, maybe even stories. But I think that the technology even that we've got with text, it will move into things like, we're seeing it already, automated diagnosis. So actually, the chatbot can take on the role that is often, used by doctors to help people diagnose things. We'll see it expand in law to understand like how law cases should be adjudicated. We'll see it move into design so that, generative models will become 3D and we can design new 3D objects, new fashions. We'll see, as I say, some more formulaic script writing. So I think that pretty much everything we see a creative human doing, we'll see generative AI being able to help them do that.
All right. I think that's you're spot on. I think it's a very exciting times that we are living in today. Uh, but then, what are your thoughts on the trust and reliability of these generative tools?
So people often are asking me, whether this is going to make humans redundant. But I think that although we've been beguiled by, say, ChatGPT, we mustn't be too in awe, because actually it's very fallible. And I think people believe the hype at first. There was a lot of hype about these, but actually they can be made to fall over still, and that they lack reasoning capabilities. So what these various models can do is they can look at the data they're trained with, and they can extrapolate and regurgitate, things that are in that data. But it's much harder for them to do anything that involves reasoning. And actually, I still think that what will probably happen. So people often ask me, are these things going to make people unemployed? And I think what they'll do is they'll change employment. People will use these tools, but actually for at least the foreseeable future, there's going to still be needed a lot of human oversight.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, we have seen, interesting things like, we have seen authors, writers, actors complaining about, how their original work has been used to train these Gen AI models without their explicit permissions, right? With these increasing conflicts between the creative world and generative AI, how do you see the situation panning out?
So I have to be a little bit careful here, because actually I've been asked to advise on one of the high profile cases. So I shouldn't say anything that will prejudice my independence. What I probably should say is that we're in a situation where we probably need to clarify the law on this quite urgently, because we need to make sure that it's very clear what data people can use to avoid the situation we're in now, where many companies are getting lawsuits. So I think it's quite important for government, and actually probably the test cases and law will help determine this, but it's also probably quite important that government should actually make clear decisions on the provenance of data, how data can be used from the internet. And that's something that we should all be involved in, I think. I'll say maybe a little bit more on that later, but I think that it's important that scientists can advise, but everybody should make this decision or be involved in the decision, in the lawmaking.
Yes, yes. The other interesting part has been, a lot of excitement. That there has been a lot of excitement, or may I say, debate over generative technology in academia, and how, this has been used by students, and how, professors and teachers foresee students use this. The corporate world seems to love it. How do we sort of bridge this gap? Because academia fits into corporate, and then sort of the life goes on like that, right?
So I guess there are several different answers to that. I think that even from school age, we probably need to educate our children about the capabilities of generative AI, because they will, just like now, you'd use a spell checker. You'd imagine using generative AI to help you write even. So I think that actually understanding how to use these tools to actually increase your productivity is something, and I fought it for a while, that it's something that should come right from an early age, that people actually understand this. And also, we should still have exams. We probably will need to go back to exams where they're closed book and people aren't allowed, any assistance, just to make sure they still can actually write and do these things. But I think that using these tools, so for instance, some of my students whose first language isn't English, it's become much easier for them to produce a first draft of a paper. And so long as they're not plagiarizing, but they're just using it to perfect their English, I think this is actually, it makes people much more productive and can really increase, the pace of change. Is that what you're asking?
Yes. I think what you are definitely hinting at is, we have to look at the constructive side of the usage of these tools and sort of weave that into how we can do it more productively for our students.
Yes,
right?
absolutely. I think so, because people will be using these tools all the time. There'll be like enhancements for humans. And I really come back to the important thing. I think that AI is so fundamental to our lives. And also, we will have to make decisions about how AI should be used. And it's very important that people become educated so they can make good choices about how AI should be used and how the law around AI should be made, because people will vote for the electorate. So I think that I would even put understanding of AI right from primary school onwards. People, at the moment, there's a lot of fear generated around AI and also a lot of misinformation because people haven't had the education as to what it is.
Absolutely. Now let's discuss about the ethical side of it, right? The much discussed topic about the ethics of generative AI world. Whose responsibility really is it? I mean, uh, any ideas about who should address?
So it's an interesting question. So I think one thing that's really important as a scientist, and we see a lot of scientists expressing opinions on how people should live or on what should be done. But I think it's quite important as a scientist to really say what your opinion is about a science, and then to separate that out from a political opinion. And I think actually, as we move to some of these questions, they almost become like political opinions, because, for instance, we might in the initial stages say that as we design AIs, it should be the designer. But as they become more complex, and even perhaps if they become somehow self-determining, it's actually, you can imagine it's like a small child. The inventor has trained it and tried to give it the right capabilities, but he can't really predict whether it's going to steal somebody's apples or do these things. And at that point, I think it's really, and this is why I think it's so important that we have everybody educated about the capabilities of AI. I think it's really for the electorate to decide how we determine those things, because it's a very interesting question. Do AIs, as they become self-determining, get rights? Maybe not rights in the way that humans have, but perhaps rights in the way that animals have. So I think it's I think it becomes quite an interesting ethical dilemma. We're not close to it yet. I would probably, again, separating out my scientific from my political hat, but if I was to give an opinion, I probably would try and put the onus on the creators at the moment to be responsible. But I can also see that as you get more sophisticated systems, becomes an increasingly difficult task, and it needs a lot more research to understand how to do this.
All right. And so recently, a connected question is that recently, certain large US organizations signed an agreement with the US government on rolling out fresh guardrails to manage the risks posed by AI. Apart from the self-imposed controls by the corporate world, what can the government do more in this regard?
So I think there are a few interesting answers to that. So one I've alluded to already. I think it's important that government makes education in AI right from an early age. So the electorate is, what you want is everybody to understand it, how AI works and its capabilities, so that when they're confronted with an AI, maybe a chatbot or something, they have a level of sophistication on understanding. So education, super important. I think as these things become, we can't just leave it to tech companies, because it's not the role of tech companies to make safeguards. Companies, their primary role is for the shareholder to make profit. And I think, and by the way, again, I'm just coming back because too many scientists will tell you how to live, and I don't think that's my role necessarily. So, and I think whenever I give a political opinion, I need to highlight it as like a political rather than a technical opinion. But my opinion is that, companies by their nature aren't necessarily the best ones to be custodians of safety. So I think it's the main thing is it relies on government, hopefully government that's been elected by a populace who are understanding of AI, who actually understand what the correct decisions should be and have an informed opinion on that. And the reason that's important is because I think we've seen a wave of fear mongering and hysteria around AI. You're seeing constant scare stories, and I think it's a bit like in England when a new technology came in. There was the automobile, and people were totally afraid. Their initial reaction to new technology is always fear. And, at that point, the legislation was that a man had to walk in front of this car with a red flag to slow it down so it wouldn't go too fast and hit people. So in order to avoid knee-jerk reactions, we need to have education, but also government needs to have good advice. So it needs to set up, a proper advisory channels. And I think at some point, when these things become super intelligent, we also need to have them a bit. You can imagine like the Manhattan Project in America to build the nuclear bomb. Every country, once you've got super intelligent AIs, you probably want government-owned ones. So every government should probably invest heavily in AI and create its own super AI, because in some sense, I think in the future, AI would probably become, and again, these are my political opinions, but should become a right for everybody, because it can provide such great advice. Imagine you've got your own advisor. It's going to give you the best legal advice. It will give you the best medical advice. It will give you the best life advice. But do we want to trust that to companies? I don't, even though I like free markets and all of these sorts of things, I think actually probably in addition to that, we need every government to invest in their own Manhattan Project, which should be their own government-owned super intelligence. So it'd become like a national asset. You could imagine a bit, like a central thing where various versions of that could be distributed to citizens in order to get the information and abilities they need, and to also maybe companies within that country, so that the companies could use it to further their productivity. And again, this is more like a political opinion though, so it'd be what I'd suggest, but I need to highlight I'm straying a little bit from science here, but that would be my vision for how the future should be: AI for everybody, and it would be publicly owned.
That's great. That's great. Now, coming to more of a technical side, large language models seem to have made tremendous progress of late. And there are, some attempts at multimodal generative AI involving text, vision, and speech. What's an ideal worldview of, all of this coming together?
I think it will. I think, it's the next big step. And I think it offers amazing opportunities. So, for instance, you might want to work out how to change your spark plug on the car. Now, as well as the chat GPT just telling you how to do that, it can actually show you an image, or you could say, oh, here's a picture of my car, and then it might circle the spark plug, or it might give you instructional video on how to do these things. So I think this is definitely the direction of travel, to include more modalities, and it will they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and for some tasks, being able to generate a picture to go with your text and your descriptions, it will help many things. So you have this wiki how, which if you ever need to do anything, you can log on and it gives you step-by-step instructions to do things. Now a chat bot could do that and also generate the images to tell you how to do anything you want.
All right. But I must ask you this question. Having a luminary in computer vision field, how do you see computer vision from a scientific world advancing in keeping with this generative tool?
So I think the classical computer vision problems, there's been huge progress, and I think they've got massive performance, but they still, what will be probably over the next years will be interesting, will be actually also just making it more robust. So there's still cases where it just goes wrong and you don't understand it, why it's gone wrong. These happen less frequently, but if you were to put something that was mission critical on them, like an autonomous car or something like this, where the consequences of failure could be quite extreme, like death, you still need to get these corner cases. So I think increasing the robustness will be actually, a huge mission still, to actually try and push that accuracy even higher, so these things become much better.
So if we place the language models and the vision models and take a comparative view, do you think we have made a little more progress on the language models, or how do you sort of stack them?
No, I think we've made huge progress actually on both of them. I think one of the great things about computer vision was that it really was the proving ground for deep networks. So it was the ImageNet challenge, and so computer vision really led the way in deep learning. And I think now the language models have caught up to some extent, and that but I think that language is a fundamentally easy problem. So for instance, if I look at an image, how do I even work out what a dog is? It's just a collection of pixels. Whereas once I have the language, dog is already defined. So computer vision or imagery has all the problems of language, but even more, because you still have to organize these pixels into things that mean words. So it's kind of a harder problem, which is why the progress has been, I wouldn't say the progress has been slower, but we have to there's a lot more to do than in language.
All right. I can't let you go without asking this question. Where are we in our progress towards artificial general intelligence?
So I it's funny because I think that let's how would you like to define that? I would say would be the first question. Do you have and I guess, do you have a definition you'd want to use?
Nothing, specific in my mind, Professor. I mean, just
yeah. So I would say that it probably will happen, but we should be very careful when it does happen, because I think some people already want to ascribe human-like properties to machines. So they want to say it's conscious or it has emotions, and then this might lead to people ascribing say human-like rights to a machine, which I think this is very dangerous, because these are just they're equivalent to calculators. So by saying you think an AI should have rights or such like human-like rights, you should probably extend that to calculators as well. So I think that we're probably going to get there within the next 10-20 years, I'd say. The rate of progress is absolutely phenomenal. Yeah.
All right. So, well, that was a great session with some thought-provoking views on this immense progress in this field of generative AI. associated risks and opportunities. I'd like to thank you, Professor Philip, for joining us today. And I hope the audience will benefit tremendously from this discussion today. Thank you so much.
And thank you for having me. It's been really fun.
For more content on tech and leadership, subscribe to nasscom YouTube channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update.